Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai. So we'll go on now with chapter 39 from the Devi Bhagavatam, retold by Ramesh Menon. Narada continued his amazing story. That king's name was Taladvaja, and when he proposed to me so forthrightly, I thought earnestly for a moment and said, I don't know whose daughter I am. I do not know who my father and my mother are. All I know is that a dark man brought me here to this lake. He also has gone away, and I do not know where. My Lord, I don't even know my own name. I am an orphan, and I am lost and helpless. Will you help me? Talavaja asked a golden palanquin to be fetched, some fine silk clothes for me, and he took me home with him to his palace. Muni will understand, I no longer knew who I was. Within the week, on an auspicious day, that king took me for his wife with all ceremony. The king named me Sabhagya Sundari, and I was dearer to him than his life. Day and night, he wanted just to be with me, and he was a handsome king, and we spent most of our time at passionate lovemaking. We would both drink quantities of mead, and we ranged the kingdom together, city and forest, lakes, green banks, wooden hills. I knew only the king's ardor, and I remembered nothing of the yogis, the Vedas, or the Shastras. Thus, my friend, 12 years flitted by as if they were just some weeks. One day I realized I was pregnant. Taladvaja was beside himself with joy. He spent all his time pampering me, bringing me anything I wanted, whether it was a pickle made from mangoes brought from some distant kingdom or exotic sweets made of milk and honey. He brought me lotuses for my hair and silks obtained from ships that came from across the sea. In time I was delivered of a son. Taladvaja's delight knew no bounds, and he named that son Viravarma. 2 years passed, and then I became pregnant again. Again, a fine prince was born to us, and we called him Sudanba. Why, in time, O Vyasa, I gave birth to 12 boys and spent my days raising them. Our lives were perfectly happy, and soon our princes came to end, and we found suitable brides for them. Before we knew it, the king and I had become grandparents. Our palace was full of bright voices and laughter, and all the things that are most precious to human happiness. Of course, I grew increasingly entangled in attachment. No trace of who I really was remained, either upon my person or in my mind. Only when any of my children were ill did I suffer. But soon our sons and their wives fought amongst themselves, and then I felt anguish and was helpless against time's ravages that all the living beings must endure. I sank deeper and deeper into the bondage of samsara. Why, I grew proud, thinking that I was a good wife, and what an able mother, and what a kindly mother-in-law and loving grandmother. I also thought of myself as a sage queen who had her husband's ear. But fate moves on and sweeps everything before her. My husband had an implacable enemy in the king of a neighboring kingdom. One day, that king arrived with his legions to attack Taladvaja and his kingdom. Our kingdom was besieged, and my sons and grandsons rode out to defend their city. The battle was swift and savage. All my children were slain. My husband barely escaped with his life, and the enemy rode away, having achieved the revenge he wanted for an old slight. I went wailing to the battlefield. Grief ripped through me, and I could hardly stand it. I flung myself across my sons' and grandsons' dismembered bodies, and my screams rang across that bloody field. Just then Vishnu arrived there in the guise of an ancient and splendid Brahmana. He said to me conversationally, "Why are you crying, gracious mother? You seem to belong to a good family and to be a woman of wealth besides. Your tears are caused by moha. You are too attached. You are deluded. Go and bathe at some sacred tirtha and offer til and tarpanam for your dead. Stop tormenting yourself, beautiful queen. Come with me. I will take you to an auspicious tirtha not far from here. If you bathe there, you will find peace." I rose and followed that lustrous Brahmana blindly, and with me now was my stricken husband, Talad Bhaja. I could not for the life of me tell why I went with this Brahmana, except that I was desperate and somehow felt sure the Brahmana would ease my anguish. We arrived at the lake called Pumi Tirtha. The Brahmana said to me, "Go and bathe now. Just think that you have lived 1,000,000 lives before this one. In each one you had sons and daughters and grandsons. Tell me, for which of them are you grieving? All this world is an illusion, dear lady, more than you know. Embodied souls inherit suffering, anguish, and little else. Enter the water, it will bless you with peace." He stood on the bank with a slight smile on his lips. My eyes swimming with tears, I walked into that lake. As I immersed myself, strange calm washed over me, as if a sea of peace swept me away from my grief. I rose sputtering from the water, and lo, I was Narada again. The Lord Vishnu was also himself, dark blue and clad in folded yellow. He stood smiling at me and cried, "Oh, Narada, you are taking your own time with your bath. Come on now, hurry a little. I have stood here for a very long time." The king, Talad Bhaja, was astounded to see me, Narada Muni, with tangled jata piled high on my head, wade out from the lake into which his queen had gone for a bath. For a time, he had quieted his grief over our children's death, but now he began to wail loudly, "My love, where are you? Ah, first I have lost my sons, and now my queen is snatched from me. Have you drowned yourself in grief? Or does a shark or a crocodile lurk under the lake? This is not the time to abandon me, my queen. How will I bear my sorrow without you at my side? Ah, my life is over. If only men were allowed to commit sati with their wives when their wives died." Now Vishnu spoke gently to the king, saying, "Haven't you ever read the Shastras, O king, that you succumb to sorrow like this? Haven't you learned that the union of wives and sons in this world is momentary, like people crossing a river in boats meeting? All that happens in this world is by fate. It is no use crying. This is where you found your queen, and now you have lost her here as well. What time gave you, it has taken from you. You never really knew who she was. It is like the tale of the crow and the tall fruit. You gained her magically, and so too you have lost her. Don't cry any more, Talad Bhaja. Go home and know that time rules you. No man can conquer time. Not for all your tears will your queen return to you. Go back to your city and rule wisely. Tread the path of yoga and find peace for yourself. Everything in this life is transient. Only the truth never changes. It is rare to be blessed with a human birth. O king, a man should do everything in his power to attain moksha." That king, who was in the grip of such shock, grew calmer at what Vishnu said to him, though he still saw Vishnu only as a bright Brahmana. Talad Bhaja bathed in the lake and returned to his city. There he slowly gave his power unto the hands of his grandsons that still lived, and then took to sannyas in the forest, where one day he did gain nirvana. When Talavaja left Vishnu and me beside the magic lake, the Lord began to laugh heartily. I said to him, Vishnu, Maya is powerful indeed, but Lord, how did I lose my memory so entirely when my soul was my own all the time? For how else could I remember every moment of Subhagya Sundari's life as I do? Yes, every moment, and I blush to think of many of them. Vishnu said, there are more dreams and lives in your body than your realized nirvana. They all exist together, for the mind is a miraculous thing, and it is much more than any man realizes. The mind itself is Maya. Muni, when you sleep, do you remember what you dream? Yet while you are asleep, all that happens in your dreams is real enough, isn't it? All lives are dreams of one kind or another. They are all the work of Maya, and Maya is inscrutable, even to me. With that, we mounted Garuda again and flew back to Svetadvipa, and said Narada Muni to me, Vedavyasa, we always live in the midst of fathomless mystery, and try as we will, we can never comprehend it with our minds. We can only surrender ourselves in bhakti to God and to the all-merciful Divine Mother. Hare Kandashvari Mata Ki Jai, Vishveshvari Mata Ki Jai, Bole Baba Ki Jai.